Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the main event. You're here with me, Daniel, once again.
And Aaron.
Everyone, we are going to try and keep this to one podcast this week, unlike the previews before the first legs where we had to split it up into two. So the information is going to be quite brief because we already have most of our teams set up. We are allowed 3 transfers this week. So it's pointless going off into all the existential realities of what may or may not happen. Please follow us on Twitter at UCL Fantasy Pod, where we'll be keeping up to date on there anyway. And of course, get us on Spotify, YouTube, Anchor, Google Podcasts. We are the main event, the Fantasy ULC podcast. Aaron, how have you been?
Yeah, I've been good. Just keeping busy with work, trying to make it through the last little bit of lockdown. How are you? I see you've been keeping busy.
Yes, I have been keeping myself busy trying. Obviously, we had a big break for the Champions League and I needed something to keep my mind busy during lockdown. So a friend of mine have been reviewing IMDb's 100 bucket list films to see before you die. So if anyone's a film lover out there, but if you do, go on to IMDb before you ever want to watch a film like I do, and I know like so many other people do, feel free to follow us on Twitter. That's at ScenesYT because our name is Absolute Scenes. So get yourself on YouTube for Absolute Scenes movie reviews, where we're going through that 100 list of films that you might not be bothered to watch, and you kind of want to see if it's any good first. We'll be doing all the hard work for you. So thanks for that, Aaron. Yeah. People are here for Champions League, though, so we'll jump into that and we'll get straight into the first game, which is Dortmund versus Sevilla. Like I mentioned, we are going to try and keep it brief. However, Dortmund probably have the most to say. So we'll go with Dortmund's recent form, which is absolutely incredible. Winning 4-0, 3-0, 1-0. They do have the De Klassiker today, playing Bayern Munich. They've had a couple of issues with injuries, which we'll go into, but Mori seems to have kept his place at right back somehow. He's a great option at 3.8 million, especially when we discuss Sevilla after this. Guerrero has been injured and was replaced by Schultz, who was at 4.1 million. That seems like a very short-term pick, but if you need that money to maybe go elsewhere, you could downgrade there. Guerrero, Sancho, and Reina all missed today's game through injury, but could be back for the midweek game versus Sevilla. So this is an absolute prime example of waiting for the team news before making any transfers whatsoever, because Jadon Sancho is going to be gobbling up 10 million of your budget and Guerrero over 6. We want to know if these guys are playing. If they are, mustard, it's fantastic. But if not, they will be the ones that need to leave our teams because we can't afford to keep players of that value, especially when we get so many transfers for the next round anyway. Emre Can is playing centre-back with Hummels at the minute, just in case anyone is considering the centre-back to go with Hummels. Don't. They're injured. But the main guys to talk about here, Jadon Sancho, Erling Braut Haaland. Sancho with 3 goals and 2 assists, but that includes a pen as well, which is obviously really important because it shows we've obviously discussed Dortmund's penalty roulette, a little bit like Man City's, but Jadon Sancho is the one that seems to be able to score them. So that really improves his opportunity to get an attack in return. Erling Braut Haaland with 2 goals and 1 assist. If Sancho's fit, I think I'm going to captain Jadon Sancho over Haaland. Bit of a risk, I know, but I feel like I need to take it. Otherwise, I'm just going to be in the outskirts of obscurity. Reina, Bellingham, Royce, Guerrero, Dahoud, all involved with goals, whether that be scoring or assisting, but none of them prolific enough to warrant me screaming, get them in your team.
Yeah, I'm debating Sancho quite a bit to bring him in. Definitely Haaland, as obviously he was my infamous omission last time. They're just seeming like incredible form. I'm actually also debating swapping the Sevilla goalkeeper, Benu. Not that I want to ideally use one of my 3 transfers for a goalkeeper, so I'm going to try not to do that. But from going from Benu to Hits, I get a save almost 1 million, and so that could go towards trying to get like a Haaland or a Sancho in. So I'm really contemplating that, just kind of like as an enabler, because they like other than Sevilla, they've not conceded. I know Schalke aren't doing the best, but that's their local rivals. Yeah, Dortmund, I'm looking to get them in, especially because of the tactic of getting people in who play first. You know the lineup, and they're just I guess they're just a team that you can really get behind because it's just young players and they're building like the future stars of the game, and it's just an easy team to kind of root for unless you're a Bayern Munich fan. I'm excited to get them in, and I think as well it's a opportunity for them to really stamp their authority and get their full confidence back. Because Sevilla have not been doing great.
I think winning the first leg, but also doing it with 3 away goals, is really putting Dortmund in a fantastic position to progress, which is why I think if we get their players in regardless, we're fairly safe for the next round. And that means potentially saving on a wild card. And they're the sort of bets I like making. So for me, if you don't have Haaland or Sancho, wait until the team lists come out, make sure they aren't injured. And if they're fit, I actually think they are the 2 priorities of every team, for me personally, maybe outside of Bayern Munich. But certainly in the first lot of fixtures, these are absolutely the 2 must-haves. I think your transfer down to Hits is inspired because he is still playing. Sevilla look a bit impotent at the minute. We can obviously have a look at that in a second. And even their fullbacks would be good choices. However, how likely are they to keep playing when Hits is barely more than the right back, who at any moment could get subbed out for Meunier? Sevilla, they beat Osasuna 2-0 after their defeat to Dortmund, but have suffered 2 defeats to Barcelona, 2-0 in the league, and then a shock 3-0, which overturned their 2-0 advantage in the Copa del Rey to Barcelona. It's not a good moment for them. They have no major injuries outside of what we mentioned last time. I think this is the team to ditch. They're in bad form, and La Liga, I think, is showing itself, and I can't believe I'm saying this, to arguably be the weakest league out of the 5 big leagues.
No, to be fair, I would agree with you. They're just really a downward spiral. I think what's happened is that they're trying so desperately to catch up with the Premier League in terms of revenue, where they're signing outrageous deals like they were going to play the one match in America. Like, it's just they're desperately trying to cling to money. And I don't know whether that is because they, at the time when that dispute was going on, they were still probably the best league in terms of quality. That all of their teams who made it into Europe progressed quite far. But I don't know whether they've just kind of, I don't know, it's just they're not as aggressive in the transfer market as they used to be. I don't know whether that is because of finances. Obviously, we know about Barcelona's situation. Real Madrid have not, I don't know what they're planning, whether they're trying to save money for a big overhaul, but they've kind of been through manager roulette. And that's why Atletico Madrid have kind of profited, and that's why they find themselves where they are in the table. Sevilla, though, are kind of just one of them teams where they've always just been in and around the top 4, and they've kind of finished 4th. Well, they're kind of the 4th. Well, they're 4th right now, but they're there because Real Sociedad, Villarreal, Valencia, you've got a group where any one of them could finish 4th, but not one of them is aggressive enough to really kind of progress and make that position theirs. Sevilla would kind of doing that in the league right now. They've got a 6-point cushion ahead of Real Sociedad. But the point I'm trying to get to is that I think Sevilla are one of them teams where they are just desperately trying to hold on to 4th spot in the league. And I think they're going to be one of them teams where I think there's a few other teams as well that are going to focus more on the league than where they are in the Champions League. Even though they do have a chance of progressing, I think just, however, how far they get into the Champions League is just money bonus. I don't think they like ideally, I think they would rather focus on the league and have the midweek games cancelled. Like, I think that's just one. I think they're one of their teams, but I don't know 100%. But that's just kind of the feeling I get from them. And the striker Ed Nasiri, he was quite a popular pick for the first game because of Dortmund's bad form. I think he's going to be in a lot of people's transfers this week. And so 100%, I would make him a priority transfer to get out, because you want to be able to get one of these other players who have a chance of either making a comeback or are playing against weakened opposition and are going to potentially score a few.
Yeah, Luke de Jong has been their favoured striker over the last couple of games. Obviously, it hasn't really worked. And Naziri's been playing on the left. I don't trust the team. I certainly don't trust him. And I have one guaranteed transfer. We'll talk about the possibilities of transfers at the end, but my guaranteed transfer is Ed Naziri out, Haaland in, providing injuries don't occur to Haaland or anything else, nothing drastic happens. That is the number one for me. Anyone with Ed Naziri, take him out.
And then watch Ed Nasiri score a hat trick.
Yeah, I know. We can only with the information that we have. We can't predict the future. We can just do our best.
Yeah.
Aaron, what's the score for this game? Who's going through?
I think Dortmund will still go through. I think that Sevilla's best chance of progressing was in the first leg. They needed to make sure to not to give away goals to Dortmund, who are so good at attacking. And the way that Haaland played against them last time, I think they're going to win this game again. So, yeah, I've got Dortmund 2-1 going through.
Yeah, I've got Dortmund 2-0. Sancho Haaland, double up, the double act. We'll jump on to Juventus versus Porto. I suppose, for me, the clear and outstanding options here are Ronaldo and Chiesa. What I think everyone wants to know is who's playing in defence with Danilo suspended.
Yeah, and also Bonucci and Chiellini are injured.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's not looking good,
so
but it's looking good for your...
and De Ligt at centre-backs.
No, De Ligt hasn't even been playing. It's been Alexandro as centre-back. I don't know whether De Ligt will be playing. He was on the bench in the last game and didn't even come on, but obviously Demiral was playing. So what I think will happen is that Alexandro will partner De Ligt in the Champions League. Obviously, you've got this weekend's games, because obviously we are recording before all the weekend games take place. So just check the lineup, see if Alexandro started again in centre-back. But even for Alexandro's price, he's quite a premium defender, and for being a centre-back, he kind of loses his appeal. Frabota is a young defender who is the new left-back for Juventus. He has been getting a few assists and creating a few chances, but nothing outrageous to the point where I'd say, yes, get him in. But if you are tight on a budget, he's definitely an option who plays on the first day, and he's 4 million. So that's a good option if you need to free up some cash.
He's also incredibly handsome. So if you're trying to make a good looking 15, I'm sure Steph will want to watch the Juventus game, Aaron.
Yeah, I'll make her watch it.
She'll be very happy with you.
Some good news. Weston McKennie is signed permanently for 18 million euros. So that seems like a bargain. But that's some good news for Juventus this past week. But the defense, honestly, I would use their game against Lazio at the time of recording. It's this evening. So check that game, check who their starting 11 is, and that's probably going to be the starting 11 for Porto, because they can't afford to slip up against Lazio, and I think it's going to be a very similar team, like what you mentioned, Chiesa and Ronaldo, but something that Pirlo, I think, has learned since the Porto game is that Morata is key. And I think he'll definitely make an appearance, although he's still pretty determined to start Kulusevski up front with Ronaldo, even though neither of them are strikers. So it's actually nice to have because with their game against Spezia are kind of, I'm trying to think what, they're like Leeds in the Premier League, where they've come up, but because they play so attacking and with so much confidence, they've given a lot of teams a really hard time. And so Juventus were struggling to break them down. On comes Morata, and then the 3 goals just flow from there. So hopefully against Lazio, Morata starts, and then it's also the first game. So if Morata is in the starting lineup, he's worth a shout as maybe a Suarez replacement or an En-Nesyri replacement if you've got the money, because he's a cheaper striker.
Porto have won 2-0, drawn 0-0, and lost 3-2 since their first leg win. And Taremi hasn't scored in any of them. Mariga has a goal, Uribe has a goal, and Otavio has 2 goals. I've seen a few people inquiring about Oliveira, as he is the penalty taker. For me, Porto are incredibly out of sorts. Before the first leg, we predicted that they'd get a result in Portugal, and we thought that they'd struggle in Italy. Absolutely nothing is changing my mind here. I personally would keep and not leap on any of these players for either team. I wouldn't be looking to bring in a single Juventus player or a single Porto player. But if you have them, and providing they aren't Bonucci, Chiellini, or Danilo, I wouldn't be looking to get rid either. Even Alexandro can pick up bonus points from his ball recoveries. Playing centre-back, we do see that centre-backs are more likely to get ball recovery points than full-backs. Obviously, his price is quite high. Porto, we know that they can pull out shock draws, shock clean sheets, and you don't really want to be taking them out, especially when they don't have any expensive players. They're all really, really appropriately priced. I think Oliveira might be one of their more expensive players. And I know that he's on penalties and anything can happen, but we are seeing a massive downturn in the number of penalties awarded now that referees are starting to get to grips with the use of VAR and the rules. The handball rule has been changed again. So hopefully there's going to be less ridiculous penalties, goals disallowed, etc., etc. But that means that penalty takers aren't as important as they were at the start of the season, which really skewed so much data for everyone. So I wouldn't be looking to bring in someone like Oliveira personally or any other Porto player. But if you have them, do not be scared of keeping them. They play on the first night, keep them in there, pray they don't get sent off. And you know that if it goes well, fantastic. And if it doesn't, you can take them out, you can substitute them out. But I'm absolutely positive that people will have more concerning transfers to make with premium options.
Yeah, ideally you don't want to make loads of transfers around the 4 million, 5 million players. You kind of just want to make sure you've got all the big hitters in that you can. And unless it is for saving money, but then are you going to get a better starter around the Porto price? I don't believe so. And so, yeah, I agree with you to keep them in. With Porto as well, like their past few games have been against the undefeated Sporting Lisbon, who is probably the shoe-in to win the title in Portugal this year. And I think for this game in specific, though, the Champions League, it's famous for comebacks. And I read a stat that in the last 11 seasons that Juventus have only won the first leg of the round of 16 3 times, but have still progressed in 9 seasons. So
Wow.
Juventus at 2-1 and they've got the away goal, it seems like this is going to be another comeback win and Juventus will win. And actually, the goal that Chiesa scored in the last leg was Porto's first goal conceded at home this tournament, which shows that they don't do as well away from home. And that kind of in Portugal is their fortress. So I think that Juventus are going to win this game. I think it'll be like a 3-1. And I think Morata and Ronaldo will score.
I don't have that much faith in Juventus forwards. I think this is going to be 1-0 progress on away goals.
Which I also wouldn't disagree with. It's just one of them things with Juventus, isn't it? You don't know which one. Are you going to get the Juventus that took apart Barcelona, or are you going to get the Juventus that you saw in the last game?
Yeah.
You just don't know, do you?
Exactly. And that's the issue. But if you've got them, you may as well keep them unless you don't have any pressing matters. But I know that I certainly do. We'll jump on to the next game. Keep flying through these ones. Next up, we've got Liverpool versus Leipzig. Playing in Budapest again, which is going to be absolutely hilarious if the score is anything other than 2-0. Because how is an away goal going to be determined?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting that, I think Liverpool are quite happy with their recent form that the game's not at Anfield.
Yeah, I suppose it actually gives them a bit of an advantage. 5 defeats in a row there. It's a bit of a shame, really, that Leipzig aren't playing at Anfield when I have so many Leipzig players. That's definitely concerning me. Liverpool, 1 win in the last 3 games, 2 defeats. One was an embarrassing defeat to Everton, first time since the 90s. And the second was to a much improved Chelsea side. They are out of form, but they are absolutely capable of anything. Salah's been poor, but he had been for the games before the first leg, and he still scored. I think we need to keep an eye out on this weekend's game because Jota came off the bench against Chelsea. So I'll be keen to see if he's playing because he could be a phenomenal shout. It's just how fit is he? I want to see that. He's going to give them such a massive boost because that front 3 looked tired. And he's probably the only punt worth taking. I think the smart decision would be to wait until after this game to bring him in. But if you're looking to catch up, keep an eye out this weekend, as everyone will be for FPL anyway. And that could be a really good gateway into a Liverpool team that do have a 2-0 lead. But if you can't afford Salah, if you do have Liverpool players, I would not be taking them out. With a 2-goal advantage, away goals as well. And the fact that they can just turn on a switch and be the best team in the world again. And even if they do play badly, we've seen them pick up ball recovery points. Trent and Robbo can always get an assist. Salah can always pull something out of his backside. The players are too good. So if you have them, you can just keep them. If you don't have them, though, I think you have a screw loose to rush to get any of them in other than a Jota. What are you making of Liverpool at the minute?
I've heard like a lot of noise. Obviously, Liverpool, one of the most supported teams in the world. There's going to be a lot of pundits. There's going to be a lot of like kind of noise coming from all avenues. People saying that Klopp needs to leave. I've seen that Klopp had a similar issue in his last season at Dortmund. But I've also seen that Salah wants to leave. It's kind of just been all over. So I've tried my best to kind of drown all of that out and just look for what I'm seeing from my own eye test. I think one of the biggest issues is that you're playing professional football at a really high level and you're playing so many people out of position. And I don't think, like, I know that a lot of players, when they're growing through the youth systems and stuff, they started playing football in a position that isn't the one that they've ended up playing professionally. But I think the sooner that Liverpool get 2 actual centre-backs and then get Fabinho back in front of them defending the back 4, and they stop playing such a ridiculously high line, I think that you'll see a huge difference. And I think one thing that I know that'll happen, and I need to make sure I try not to get annoyed by it, is then Van Dijk eventually comes back, not this season, but like next season, and they end up playing good again. And people are like, oh yeah, this shows how important Van Dijk is. From my point of view, yes, he's a great centre-back, but I think it's just down to what I've just said. You'll have an actual centre-back playing in his position. And there's just so much to concentrate on in the highest level of the game. Like a split-second decision. I think it was, I don't know what professional player it was, but you might know, Dan, who said that the first 10 yards are in your head or something like that. Do you know who said that?
Teddy Sheringham said the first 4 yards are in your head.
Yeah, that was it. I knew 10 was too much.
That's it. Maybe if Mbappe was thinking.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that, like, kind of that indecisiveness from a midfielder playing at a centre-back role where you're like, oh, I don't know whether to close him down. I know another pundit was saying a similar thing, but I don't know which one it was. I think once you have a centre-back there, like 2 centre-backs there who play in the position, I think you'll see a huge difference with Fabinho protecting them rather than playing him out of position and then weakening the midfield for the sake of a weakened defence, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally.
But that's just my opinion. I think that once you get that sorted, and obviously there's the saying, I think it was Alex Ferguson saying that attack wins games, but defense wins championships. Once they get that, I think that you'll see the front 3 do better. Jota is a huge addition back into the team. I think he could, if he does well this weekend, he's definitely in my thinking to get him in for the Champions League. But in terms of what I'm seeing, though, I think people are kind of overreacting about Salah. He's still the top scorer in the Premier League. 9 times out of 10, he'll put in a really good performance, create loads of chances. I think it's just kind of a in-the-moment bias that people are like, oh yeah, Salah's finished, Mane is awful. For 3 seasons, they've been great, and I think it's just a bad run of form. It just happens to be at a critical moment in the competition.
On to their opponents, Leipzig. They've been in terrific form. They've won 3-0, 3-2, and 2-0. In Kunku is now a left-sided midfielder because the news that no one wanted to hear, Angelino's been injured. Gratefully, late fitness check for today's game, so keep an eye out on that. But this will be a wait and see until Tuesday, really, for the press conferences. Nagelsmann has said that he is such an important player that he needs to determine the risk in bringing him back early because of the dangers of muscular injuries. That is good news, because that means if there is any chance of him playing against Liverpool, he will. But that is unfortunately a piece of information that is coming a few days too early for us, Aaron. Mm-hmm. So I have, when I'm thinking about my transfers, I have a transfer system set up for if Angelino isn't going to play, he's eating up too much budget, and one if he is going to play. That's really important for people to do, I think, because you want to know what your transfers are for each of the scenarios, but you do not want to make those transfers at all until 7:10 UK time on Tuesday night. So within an hour of that fixture kicking off, so that you have the starting 11s for the first games and we have as much information as humanly possible before making decisions. At left back, There's been a rotation between Halstenberg and Klosterman as they have moved to a back four. Halstenberg suspended for this weekend's game, so don't panic if you don't see him in the starting lineup. He is going to be back for the Liverpool game, whether he'll play or not. We don't know. Leipzig's defenders are incredibly difficult to predict, always have been, as are their goal scorers, because every sod scored. Even Alexander Soloth has scored. Gratefully, Nkunku has scored and gotten assists, and Poulsen is their starting forward. Take from that what you will, but again, I think you need to be seeking professional help if you're jumping on Leipzig players with a 2-0 deficit at this stage. Just don't do it. Sabitzer is injured, but he is not a doubt for the Liverpool game at the moment. They are expecting him to be back. The only reason he won't be back is if he gets another injury on top of this.
I think if they play exactly the same as they did last time with that high line and no pressing on the wings, I think Liverpool will get the same result. I think they have to change something. I don't know whether Angelino being injured, like if he is out of the game, I don't know whether that actually gives Leipzig a better advantage, knowing that they'll be better defensively. But I think as well, like with the last game though, you mentioned it on the last podcast, they played Angelino in a back four, and yeah, we've mentioned that so many times that he needs to be a wing back with a back three. And so if they do that with him playing, like just something needs to change really. So, and you can't let Liverpool just like batter the goal, because although they're not being very efficient right now, eventually they do find a way on most games. To be fair, that's probably a bad statement with their recent form, but most occasions they find a way to find a breakthrough. But Leipzig are more than capable. I think they're kind of, when the draw was made, like Liverpool was still doing really, really well in the league. I think they were top at that point when the draw was made. So I don't know whether Leipzig were like, oh, we'll just kind of, we have nothing to lose here. But with a young manager, young team, I think if they play at their very, very best, which they're capable of and what they've shown in the league, I think they'll get a few goals, and it just depends on whether Liverpool will respond. So in terms of players like Nkunku and stuff, they're still so cheap, and there's not very many players around that price point that are like you would choose ahead of them. And if they are, they kind of play in the second week. So it depends on your kind of tactics behind that. But I think Leipzig will score at least one. I just don't know whether they'll get the two. It depends if they play with that high line again.
So what do I think the score's going to be for this game, Aaron?
I think it'll be 1-1. I think both teams will score, but on form, I don't think it'll. Yeah, I don't think a team will break through and win.
I'm going to go for 2-1 Leipzig, Liverpool to go through.
Again, it's one of the things where I don't disagree with you, but it's because we just don't know what. It's kind of like Jekyll and Hyde for these teams. You don't know which one's going to turn up, and that's really frustrating.
These are two of the most unpredictable teams in this competition. And the fact that they play each other is a nightmare for us, an absolute nightmare. I just think Nagelsmann must have learned his lesson. He must have. Because we saw something similar against PSG, where last year they set up against PSG quite similarly in the semi-finals, I think it was. And PSG walked all over them, even though Leipzig had everything going for them. Then we saw in the group stages this year that they had learned from that, and they did really well in both games, even though the result didn't go for them in one of them. So I think Leipzig are going to go into this game with a lot less fear, being 2 goals down. But I think Liverpool are too good to throw that lead away. We'll jump on to PSG versus Barcelona. This has turned into a box office game again. Not just because of the 4-1 in the first leg, but these two teams are absolutely crazy. PSG got battered off Monaco after beating Barcelona. They only lost 2-0, but it could have been 5. They then beat Dijon 4-0 and Bordeaux 1-0. But again, these teams aren't particularly strong. And the issue that we've got is Pochettino thinks he's playing FIFA. I don't know if anyone else does this on career mode, but you have a squad of 22 players and you play 11 in one game and then 11 in the next so that they never get tired. That is what Pochettino's doing at the minute. There is a mass rotation. I think Keane will always be a good pick. Mbappe is as safe as houses, and there are lots of injuries in this side still that haven't changed. Neymar's still out. Di Maria looks like he's still out. So I'd go with either of those. If you don't have either, don't be scared of getting them. Where I'd be concerned is defensively. And of course, I have Kurzawa as one of my defenders. So that's lovely. At least he's cheap and he's attacking. But I would not like to have any money invested in Paris's defence. Just stick to Mbappe or Moise Kean. What do you make of PSG's chances?
I think it's hard because they're going to play in the French Cup this weekend. And so I think it's going to be a mass rotation again. They've got the chance to rest their starting 11. So I would look at who they've, like their lineup on for the French Cup and then just pick everyone who didn't play. If you get the people like, I don't know if Gay is going to play again against Barcelona. He had a horrid time last time. But yeah, I don't think it'll be as big of a scoreline as last time. I think Paris Saint-Germain will play a little bit more safe. And I think it's more likely can Barcelona do another Champions League comeback against Paris Saint-Germain. I'm really excited for this game.
I'm really excited for it. Messi has come alive. He's got 4-4. And in the last 2 games against Sevilla, Ronald Koeman has been playing Dest and Alba as wingbacks. But that is absolutely outrageous if it happens again against PSG. Because if you want to leave Serginho Dest past the halfway line with Mbappe in behind, you're an absolute lunatic. But we did see, obviously, his defensive mistakes leading up to the previous game, playing Dest and Piqué in there when they hadn't played in months against one of the best players in the world and one of the fastest players in the world. So I wouldn't put it past Coleman to do something absolutely idiotic. I think this is definitely a game to check the team sheet on to see if you need a captain for this game. Look at the formations and see who is going to exploit who. And that is going to be the story of the game. I actually think this is going to be a case of manager versus manager more so than player versus player. PSG with a 3-goal cushion and 4 away goals have no excuses here to not go through. I think they are going to play counter-attacking football. They're going to sit deep. I imagine Danilo Pereira is more suited to playing in this game in central midfield. And they'll be looking to exploit Barcelona's vulnerability at the back on the counter-attack. And Kylian Mbappe is going to be a great choice for that. And I think I'm not sure if Icardi suits that tactic so much. If Icardi does play, I think that gives away Pochettino's hand. So this is going to be absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if I was Pochettino and if he came to us and said, Dan and Aaron, I want to know who you think we should play, I think that Herrera and Danilo would probably be the best defensive midfielders, probably playing like a 4-2-3-1, have two defensive midfielders, having Danilo, Herrera, just because they can offer you some stuff going forward. But I think that Paredes will end up playing, and we know how much of a hothead he can be and how hot and cold he can be at any moment. And so I think it's things like that that makes it such an intriguing game. You'll have Verratti again, who on his day, brilliant, and then the next day could be awful. Yeah, I'm really excited for this game, and it makes it... I don't have any players from these teams, so I don't know whether that will be a mistake going into the week, or whether it'll help me enjoy the game more, knowing that I don't have anyone and I can just chill and watch the game for what it is.
Yeah. I think if you've got defenders or goalkeepers from either of these teams, unless they are one of the fullbacks, I'd make them a priority to sell, to be honest. Less so PSG's, because they've got more of a chance of at least playing in the next round. But if you've got any Barcelona centre-backs or Ter Stegen, I think that needs to be a priority to get rid of, especially the goalkeeper, because he's very, very expensive. He's one of the most expensive goalkeepers on the game, if not the most expensive goalkeeper on the game. What's your scoreline for this game, Aaron?
I think that Barcelona will win 3-1, but obviously Paris Saint-Germain will advance.
I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. We went for that in the first leg, I think, as well. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw, PSG to advance as well. And I reckon it'll be Barcelona getting a couple of goals, pushing on to get that third, and then PSG will hit them on the counter. Barca will be demoralised, and PSG will do them again. That's just my opinion, though. I'm not Mystic Meg.
I don't think it'll be another 6-1 or something ridiculous, what the last comeback was.
Yeah. Barcelona don't have a player... I would say they don't have a player like Neymar. Obviously, they still have Messi. But Neymar's performance in that game was like from a different planet. It was inspired. But also, their team were better then. Messi is in his twilight years. So I don't know how capable he is of taking a game by the scruff of the neck, is what I mean by that. Obviously, his quality is undeniable. So I don't want people to get it twisted that I'm saying Neymar's a better player than Messi. That is 100% not the case in the slightest. We will jump on to the second round of fixtures now. I hope everyone's learnt their lesson to not pile into these teams after so many people had players like Karim Benzema who were nowhere to be seen. Anything can happen. There are lots more games to be played between now and the second lot of fixtures, so it is a no-brainer to try and go for the first lot. That being said, of course, Bayern Munich and Man City are in this patch. Aaron, I want to make this first game really quick, Man City versus Gladback. I don't think we need to say much about it, because anyone who's listening to this podcast, your guess is as good as ours on who Pep Guardiola is going to play. There is no predicting him. Don't try. If you have a player, marvellous, keep them. If you don't have a player, don't be frightened, because they might not even play. I've got Gundogan. He's going nowhere. Grateful I don't have any defenders. I think the only player or players that are borderline certain of a starting 11 place are the goalkeeper and Ruben Diaz. Everyone else is at risk of rotation. Everyone else. Be our guest to pick one.
Yeah, I've got nothing to add to that. Like, you're doing it at your own peril. Obviously, he'll play a strong starting 11. He doesn't want to have like an embarrassing exit, but he's competing on all fronts. It frustrates me when people say, like, how come he hasn't picked this player? How come he hasn't done this? Just because they're in my fantasy team. If in the ideal scenario moving forward, I'm not going to pile into Man City unless I know they're going to play on the first night or in the first 2 nights. Unless that happens, I'm not going to pile into Man City's team. I'm happy with Gundogan right now. because he's not taken up a lot of my budget. But in terms of like Cancelo, who did unreal in the last game, 11 points. But do I trust him to do that again? The likelihood is like maybe Zinchenko and Kyle Walker are going to play the next game. Cancelo gets rested for the league. We just don't know.
Exactly.
And it takes up so much budget. I mean, ideal scenario, we know the starting 11. I bring in Cancelo for Angelino. But that is not Pep's way of thinking. And to be honest, I don't blame him. He has the chance to do an historic where he wins every single competition. His team are good enough to do so this season. And players just need a rest every now and again. These games are getting played every 3 days. He's going to have, I believe he plays this weekend, 3 days later plays another one. Then 3 days later plays against Fulham. 3 days later plays Gladback. Like, yeah, you're ridiculous if you're trying to predict the starting 11. And I see a lot of people do it on Twitter, but I'm just like, it's just crazy. Just why do it?
Don't do it. Gladback as well. Sell. They've lost both games since the first leg against Dortmund and Leipzig. If you care, Hoffman and Thuram have scored. Just sell everyone. I've got nothing else to say. Manchester City are going to win this game. You've got 3 transfers to get a head start on the next round of fixtures. Use them wisely. If you've got Mönchengladbach players, time to say bye-bye to them. I don't care who they are.
I agree.
What's the score for this game?
I think 2-0 again to Man City.
Yeah, me too. Real Madrid versus Atalanta. I just don't care about that game. Real Madrid versus Atalanta. Casemiro is suspended. Get him out. I have him. I'll be getting him out. They've only played 1 game, which was a draw with Sociedad. Vinicius Jr. scored. Lucas Vazquez got the assist. They've got the Madrid derby this weekend. Benzema and Hazard could be back for the Champions League game, as they are touch and go for this weekend's game. So they've got another week on top of that to recover. So if you have either of those players, you don't need to get rid of them. I don't think anyone's going to have Hazard. But Benzema, if you have Benzema, don't get rid of him just yet. Have a look, see his fitness going into, obviously, this Tuesday, really. If there are any doubts, then I would take him out because he eats too much budget. But you never know. If he comes off the bench against Atletico Madrid or starts against Atletico Madrid, you know he is ready for Atalanta unless he gets injured again, which can happen to anyone.
Yeah, with Real Madrid, it's not that they want to, because obviously winning this competition is their bread and butter, but I think they would be kind of grateful if they were, like, obviously not right away and Zidane would be on the chopping block, but if they could just focus on the league and try to catch Atletico Madrid, I think they would actually do a lot better. I think being in the 2 competitions in their current situation is actually harming the team. But they stand a really good chance right now. Obviously, they've got the 1-goal lead, but that's dangerous against Atalanta because now Atalanta are playing with nothing to lose, and that's when they do best.
We'll jump into Atalanta. I've noticed Ilicic is doing quite well over the last couple of games, but the defenders, other than Romero, are all chipping in with goals. Gosens, the centre-backs are scoring. Tell us what's going on with that Atalanta at the minute, Aaron.
Something I want to mention about Gosens is that I'd picked him in the first leg. And obviously with how the game turned out with that red card, you could kind of be tempted to get rid of him. I know a lot of people have him. A lot of people would have Romero as well. I would keep them because Gosens particularly has scored 3 goals in 3 games. And as a defender, that is unbelievable. He's in unbelievable form. I think that gives him, I think it's 10 goals on the season in the league. So that is crazy. For the defenders, I think just stay with it. People got Romero so cheap. There's not really much point in getting him out. Sportiello is back in goal. So if you have Galini, he's at danger of not starting. If you can't afford Gosens, the other wing back, Merlier, 4.5 million, because Hateboer is still injured. He's gotten a few assists, ironically, for Gosens. Seems to wing back, like Alexander-Arnold Robertson in their day.
Yeah. Miller scored as well, hasn't he? And Gosens assisted him. I think that happened.
So they're assisted in scoring for the other one. So they're doing really well in the league right now. Like really, really good form. Winning all these games. They've got Inter Milan this weekend. So that'll be interesting. From an AC Milan fan, I really hope they win. I hope they beat Inter Milan because we are falling down the table real quick, and it would be nice if someone could catch Inter. But I think Atalanta are against, we've already mentioned these on the podcast, but they're against Spezia the Friday before Real Madrid. So they'll get an extra day's rest. They get the early kickoff on for Serie A. Look at who they play, and I would kind of judge their starting 11 more on who they put against Inter Milan. But obviously, because it's in the second week, you've got the risk of injuries. I said in the first, well, I wrote on Twitter, that's why it's also important for people to follow us on Twitter, where sent the tweet to the podcast basically saying that I would choose Muriel over Zapata. I think I would potentially still do that because Zapata is still injured, but Ilicic is cheaper, and if I had to get any Atalanta players, it would be the wing backs. I don't trust the rest of them because you just don't know what will happen in the game. Real Madrid are very experienced, and hopefully that answered the question.
We'll answer it more simply. What's the score going to be, Aaron?
Oh, I really want Atalanta to win, but I think Real Madrid will win on the day, like 2-1 or something. As frustrating as it'll be,
so pessimistic.
I know, but okay, I'm gonna go for it. I think Atalanta will win 3-1. That's my final prediction. I'm gonna lock it into the predictor game on the app right now.
I'm gonna go Atalanta 2-1.
Come on, Atalanta.
Atalanta 3-1 away goals. Next game, Chelsea versus Atletico Madrid. Jorginho is suspended. So with Jorginho missing pens, that means Mason Mount is now on pens. But not for this game, because he's also suspended, which is an absolutely huge blow to Chelsea, as he is the catalyst of their press, essentially. He's the hardest working midfielder they have at the moment in the final third or in the opponent's half. Likely that Werner will now be on penalties, but I think it's just too much to pay for someone that may or may not get a penalty to take. And still, it's just 4 points if you score a penalty. Although Werner is very capable of winning penalties as well. I'd just stay clear of the Chelsea forward line, to be honest. I don't think 1-0 wins are that inspiring, and 2-0 wins, it's tough to predict who's going to score. If you've got any of them, I don't think there's any need to take them out again. I think this is another just wait and see. Giroud, we've loved him on this podcast, and he's got every possibility of scoring again. It's just if you're looking to bring someone in, without Mason Mount, that is a concern, and without them actually playing progressive attacking football, I don't see why you'd be too keen to get any of those in. Defensively, I've had the question on Twitter, should I make a sideways move from Alonso to Rudiger? The answer at the time was, I don't think that's a sensible decision, but Alonso is now a rotation risk. Ben Chilwell has played the last 2 games for Chelsea in the league, and although he is cheap Alonso, it's not a headache that you want. You don't need Man City levels of rotation risk for Chelsea players. So to go to Rudiger could be smart. However, I'm not sure if once Thiago Silva's back, he's going to be the preferred centre-back in there as well with Azpilicueta and Thiago Silva, because Christensen's played so well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I heard that a couple of fans ringing a TalkSport in other channels like that, basically saying that Christensen, because he has played really, really well, and he has, fair play to him, his past performances we've been very critical of, because rightly so, he's very mistake prone, but recently has played so well that a lot of these fans are saying that Thiago Silva, when he's back, that it would be Rudiger making way for Christensen. And obviously, it just puts the defenders at a rotation risk. So looking at it from a Fantasy Champions League view, These are the last game on the last day. Who is the best players to come off your bench? And kind of what you were saying, Dan, the attackers are not worth it because they will take up your budget. There's similar players with similar price points that are going to be playing earlier, and so they become safer picks as a result. With the defenders, you don't have to waste that much budget. You're able to get rid of a Gladback or even a Porto defender if you want to, because they're around the same price. And then they can sit on your bench, and if you need them, there you go. But I would only really look at Chelsea for the defense because they're playing on the last day, and they're going to be kind of playing alongside the Bayern Munich assets that you'll have. And you kind of just want to save as much money as you can for the Bayern Munich assets and people who play earlier in the match, in the game week.
On with Atletico Madrid, they've played one game, won 2-0. Felix scored off the bench and the other was an own goal. They still have no Carrasco, so Lamar is playing at left wing back, not Lodi. Hermoso, Felipe and Savic were the back three. Jimenez has an unknown return date. Again, this is a stick, but don't twist. Without Mason Mount pressing this lot, I think they are going to have a much more comfortable time defensively than what they did in the first leg. That being said, they are bumbling a little bit themselves. They aren't fully assured. Suarez's goals have dried up. Obviously, if Felix is having to come off the bench, it doesn't seem like a great moment for Atleti. So this is a real conundrum of a game. It's one that I don't want to be a part of. I have Jan Oblak in goal. That's fine. I don't really care. I might get rid of him, but I'm also not that bothered. I can just see this again being 0-0 or 1-0 to Atletico Madrid or something incredibly boring like that. What are you thinking, Aaron?
Yeah, I think that Oblak is still a safe pick because, like what you mentioned before, Chelsea are only really beating people by one goal. So it means that you're less likely to get any point deductions for the amount of goals that they concede. That's why I'm going to stay with Savic in my team at 4.6. It just seems sensible because hopefully he doesn't get any point deductions for yellow cards or anything like that. But it makes people like Suarez, who I've got in my team, I think if I find out that Haaland is fit, I think I've got enough money from the transfers I'm going to be making to get Haaland in. Atletico Madrid play a lot of games between now and the Chelsea game because I think they play their game in hand next week when the Champions League games are on, which obviously they're focusing more on the league. They're miles ahead, and with a game in hand, they have a real chance of winning the league this year. I know Simeone is a serial winner, so he'll just want to win every game that he's in. But whether they can score enough against this Chelsea team, which is just absolutely solid right now, it's really hard to call. And I think this game will go to extra time. And kind of last season, Atletico Madrid in extra time absolutely messed up my team. I'd lost like an Alexander-Arnold clean sheet. I'd lost loads of points because of the goals that were scored in extra time. I think it's going to be a boring game, and don't think many goals will be scored. So I'm going to try and stick to the defenses in this team. If I need to use them on my bench, then they can come in and hopefully get a few ball recovery points. I'm not really looking at the attacking players in this anymore.
Yeah. What's your scoreline?
I'll go 1-1.
I'm going to go 1-0 Atleti and them to progress after extra time because I think they'll be fitter than Chelsea players because they are renowned for their fitness. Simeone teams. The last game, Bayern Munich versus Lazio. Bayern Munich with a 5-1 win in their only game since the first leg. Eric Choupo-Moting scored, starting on the left wing. Gnabry got a couple of goals off the bench. Lewandowski scoring again. Big news, though, is Thomas Müller is back. So that's fantastic. Maybe not necessarily for this game, but I think he could be a priority for the next lot of fixtures. We want to see, obviously, who Bayern Munich get and what the path to the final is going to be, as we will see that. But he was in tremendous form before he caught COVID. Tremendous form. Goretzka looks to be the pick, though, for me. He got 3 assists in that game. He got an assist against Lazio. He's looking dangerous. He is 7.6 million. So the same price as in Nkunku, cheaper than Jota. He's a phenomenal option in that team, especially when we've seen how much they can absolutely batter Lazio. In playing them again, but at home this time, I can only see it being one-way traffic in this game for me personally. Bayern Munich are back to full strength. Their team that they played in that 5-1 win was absolutely terrific. I think Sula is still playing right back instead of Pavard, but Sula at right back was their best defender against Lazio, going forward and defensively. He was fantastic. So that doesn't make a difference. For a man that is the size of a barn, he's got incredibly nimble footwork. If taxi was still a thing on Soccer AM, I think you would have put a couple of players on it. Definitely would have been on showboard for that last game against Lazio. I don't know if we mentioned it or not. I cannot remember, but I thought after listening to it, I was like, did we not mention how much of a baller Sula is for being the size of Mount Everest? The weaknesses that were in this Bayern team have now dissipated. This is full strength Bayern, and I think they are going to have way too much for Lazio, personally. We obviously have to wait and see about more COVID results and any more injuries, as this is in 10 days. But for now, if you're going to make transfers and you want to go for a second lot of fixtures, Bayern are the team to do it with. What do you make of Bayern?
Something that impresses me a lot with Bayern Munich is they just keep pushing themselves. They're not settling. I know that the table in Germany is quite close, and I didn't realize that El Clasico is this weekend. Might have to tune in for that. Obviously, by the time the podcast is released, it's already happened. So watch the highlights if you haven't. It's always an interesting game. But they just have so many options. But do we know if Gnabry's still injured?
Gnabry came off the bench and scored 2. So I'm going to say no, he's not injured.
All right. Sorry if you already mentioned that. Yeah, because obviously the wingers, the risk of rotation, obviously Sané absolutely destroyed. Well, actually, both of them, Koeman and Sané, destroyed Lazio last time. Lewandowski, I think, was just determined to add to his goal tally, get that Ballon d'Or that he deserves. So they are, I think, them and Man City are the biggest threats to the Champions League. And I really hope that they meet in the final, because that matchup is worthy of a final on current form. Muller being back is huge for them. And he should, they've got a few games to get him up to match sharpness before Lazio as well. But I would probably, personally, I would choose Sancho. I think he's the same price as Muller over, just because he plays first, if he's fit, obviously. They're just so good. They're so good. And it's crazy how strong they're going to get as well. Like, they keep strengthening, which is the scary thing. There's a lot of rumours coming out of Italy that Koulibaly is going to go to Bayern Munich next season.
Wow.
Koulibaly, Upamecano partnership. That is just unfair, especially in FIFA.
Centre-backs are definitely where they're weak.
Yeah, 100%. And so it'll be nice that Cameron will see how good Koulibaly actually is next season. But sticking to this season, they just have so many options, but they're less of a rotation risk. So I'm happy with Lewandowski. I'm happy with Kimmich. And I've got Coleman right now. But I still think even if he doesn't start, at least he's a player who's still so dangerous that he could come off the bench and still do something. So if a player only gets 1 point or something like that, I would still probably put him on, because I think that he would still cause some damage.
Do we need to say anything about Lazio?
No, they've only played one game since the Champions League, which they lost. Like, I had Pepe Reina in my team, which is not good. To be honest, no. They lost their game 2-0. They potentially have their game coming up, which is going to be put off because of COVID. So they could get a longer rest between Bayern Munich game, but I don't think that'll make a difference. I think the matchup's over. I think it's more about damage control.
What's your score for this game then?
I think 3-0 to Bayern Munich.
Brave going for a Bayern Munich clean sheet. I'll go for 3-1. Lots of substitutes in like the 60th minute. Hopefully not the 59th. So Aaron, we'll talk about our teams really briefly and what sort of moves we're looking to make. So at the minute, I have my goalkeepers as Jan Oblak and Szczesny. I've got Koundé, Courtois, Angelino, Kimmich and Gosens as my defenders. I've got Casemiro and Kunku, Gundogan, Sancho and Koeman as my midfielders. And I've got En-Nesyri, Lewandowski and Taremi as my forwards. I have 3 transfers to make. My number one transfer is Haaland in for En-Nesyri. I'm obviously going to have to take Casemiro out. And I like Leon Goretzka at 7.6. He's my number one preferred choice. If Angelino is injured, then I will make a decision on Tuesday on who to bring in for him. I haven't decided yet. My initial thoughts were going to be Rudiger. I wouldn't have enough anyway, I don't think. I think I'd be 0.2 million short because I'd have 4.3 left in the bank. But I don't like the idea of Thiago Silva coming back and then Rudiger not playing for the future games. We do have to think about the future rounds as well. At the minute, I've got penciled in to take out Szczesny and to put in Hits just purely to afford the Haaland and Goretzka moves. And then I'd still have Oblak anyway. That's what I'm thinking at the minute. Could change, and obviously we'll be posting our thoughts on Twitter at UCL Fantasy Pod. If you've got any questions about your own team, feel free to ask. Aaron, what's your team looking like? What transfers are you thinking about?
Yeah, so my team right now, I've got Bono and Reina for goalkeepers, Koundé, Angelino, Kimmich, Gosens, and Savic, my defenders, Gundogan, Casemiro, who obviously has to come out, Salah, Coleman, and Tyler Adams for Leipzig, and then Suarez, Ronaldo, Lewandowski. So my transfers, obviously with Hits going down, having a price drop, funnily enough, he's now 4.1. So looking to get him in for Bono. Casemiro, if I find a cheaper midfielder, I can afford Suarez to Haaland, but it really just depends on Angelino. If Angelino's injured and Casemiro, I'm going to have to sacrifice either Haaland or take a 4-point hit. And it just really depends on, obviously, because the points are huge in this game. Just 1 point is like 1,000 places. It's like ridiculous. So I am going to just try and stay tuned for the games up until Tuesday. And obviously, just repeat what advice you gave earlier, Dan. Just don't make your transfers just yet. Just kind of play around with the players. They're not going to go up in price until after the deadline. And kind of get an idea, because the game hasn't updated a lot of injuries or suspensions or anything like that. They normally update it on like the Monday before the Champions League, don't they?
They've updated some. They've updated Jorginho's suspension, but not updated Mount's. The app's a piece of garbage, let's be honest. We've always complained about it.
It's a fun game, though.
Yeah, it's a really fun game. Just fix it. The issue is with the Casemiro thing, are players that are cheaper than him are just not very good. Moranchuk maybe at Atalanta. I don't know if has he been playing, Aaron?
He played in the last game as a sub and scored, but I don't know whether he'll come on or not.
That could be a very punty option. It all depends on Angelino. Hopefully Angelino is fit, and then we don't have the headache of having to take him out.
Mm-hmm. Something I was looking at for the 4-point hit is taking out Angelino, bringing in a Chelsea defender, and then I'm able to go Casemiro to Chiesa, Suarez to Haaland, which actually looks really good for a 4-point hit, because I'm upgrading Casemiro and upgrading Suarez compared to a player that wasn't going to play in Angelino. But the 4 points, it's just huge in the game. So I would have to really hope my captain pays off.
It's going to be interesting.
Who are you looking at captain throughout these games?
So my captains for the first date is going to be Sancho or Haaland, one of the two, maybe Sancho. Then on the 10th, if that doesn't work out, I'll be captaining, can't believe I'm saying this, Nkunku against Liverpool. Oh, God. If that doesn't work out, then I'll be going to Gosens against Real Madrid. And thankfully, Bayern Munich are the last game this time, at which I'll be going for Lewandowski. I may as well take risks because Lewandowski's the safe pick at the end of the rainbow. It's not like last time where Atalanta, Real Madrid, and Man City, Gladback were the last games.
Yeah, I'm looking. If I don't bring in Haaland, I'll captain Ronaldo. Then I'll captain Salah on the second day. Probably Gosens, the same as you on the third, if that doesn't work. and then exactly the same Lewandowski on the last day. I think that's going to be a big tactic this weekend, where I think even if people don't do the captain switches, I think they'll just leave it on Lewandowski. So I think what you're constantly measuring is, will your captain probably do better than Lewandowski? And that's going to be the big thing about switching the armband or not, because it's all leading to Lewandowski. And I think he's going to be the most captained player come the end of the game week. So if you don't captain him, like if for example, Salah does really well again for me, and I don't captain Lewandowski, that could actually be scary against Lazio. That could be a very tense watch.
Well, thanks for jumping on with me again, Aaron. Hopefully both of our teams have a bit more luck than we did in the first legs. And hopefully everyone who's listened has all the luck humanly possible for the next set of fixtures. No injuries, no suspensions, no need for wild cards. That's what we're all hoping for here. Please give us a like. Please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify. We are the main event, the Fantasy ULC podcast. Follow us on Twitter at UCL Fantasy Pod. Like I say, we're usually online to answer any of your questions. If possible, we do like to wait for as much information as possible. So early questions sometimes might just have a wait and see answer. But usually on Tuesday, we'll be on there as well, answering your questions. Thank you so much for listening, as always. And we will see you for the review show after this leg. Bye now.